Hello everyone, welcome to the third podcast of the JobFAIR 20 educational program. JobFAIR is an employment fair for students and graduates of technical, technological faculties and economics. It will be held online on November 9th and 10th. I am Miris Bečović, and today we will speak with the British Ambassador in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Mr. Matthew Field. Welcome, Ambassador, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm really glad to be here.
First of all, we have to ask you, how long have you been in Bosnia and how do you like it here?
Sure. So I've been in Bosnia actually for 4 years, 2 years as ambassador, but I was here for 2 years before that working for the EU as well. So we've had 4 very happy years. I've got 2 more years as ambassador. I have to say it is one of the most interesting and challenging places that I've ever worked or lived. As a family, we enjoy it enormously. We travel around a lot. We like to explore. I've got 2 young boys who are really enjoying life here, and it's been a great experience professionally and personally.
What parts of your experience here in Bosnia have left the most impact on you?
So I think the first thing that jumps out about our experience everywhere we have been across Bosnia and Herzegovina is the people. So the warmth of the welcome that we have. People are very open, people are very welcoming. But I think also one of the things that for someone who's British is that I think we have the same sense of humour. And actually that's a really good way of linking and feeling welcome. That sense of humour means that we don't take ourselves too seriously and we don't let other people take themselves too seriously. I think it's the same kind of humour that you see in Monty Python and Topolista. So I think it's been a really important part of our experience here. But the people, and then also the amazing variety across the country. I mean, this is a country that is really blessed with all kinds of different mountains, rivers, lakes, snowboarding, hiking, beautiful scenery, natural wonders that I haven't seen anywhere else before. And I think that's just part of the reason we enjoy it here so much.
So I think we are really proud of our humor and sense of humor. I think that's a characteristic of our people that maybe everyone recognizes when they come here. So I wanted to ask you about your days at the university. So you have a bachelor degree in religious studies, a master degree both in Japanese studies and business administration. So besides that, you were also an Erasmus exchange student in Sweden. It sounds really interesting, and for me, for a student here in Bosnia, it sounds really unusual. So can you tell us more about your student days and all those experiences?
Absolutely. I mean, it probably sounds as though I can't make up my mind. So that combination of studying religious studies and then doing a master's in Japanese studies and then doing a master's in business administration suggests that I kind of change my focus of what I'm interested in. But I think what sort of runs through all of those experiences is a curiosity. So religious studies was an interesting subject to me because it was a way of looking at different cultures, different histories, different languages, and I enjoyed that immensely. But I also then was looking for a different kind of experience afterwards, and so I went to Japan and I worked as a teacher, an English teacher, and also part-time as a rugby coach whilst I was there. And I worked at the Japanese World Cup in 2002. And that experience opened my eyes to a whole new culture that I didn't know very much about before. I enjoyed that so much that I did a master's on my return to the UK. And then partway through my professional career as a diplomat, I decided that I wanted to expand my understanding, particularly of business and business administration. So I decided to do a business administration master's by distance learning. So I did that part-time alongside my job. So those are very different kind of qualifications. None of them, perhaps, qualifies me to be a diplomat. So I have not studied international relations or politics or something like that. And I think many people are surprised when they see that I don't have those studies in my background. But I think what it demonstrates is curiosity. And I think curiosity is actually the most important thing for a diplomat.
Do you see that kind of curiosity in the students here in Bosnia or in the world in general, I think?
So I think there's always challenge and a balance between, that desire to really understand a subject very, very well that you get at university. And I do, when I speak to students here, whether they're studying engineering, or they're studying politics, or they're studying math, or something completely different. I'm really impressed often with the way that young people here sort of focus and commit themselves to understanding that subject much better. But I think for me, part of being a student and part of learning has always been some of the other activities that go along with that, and the other parts of learning, perhaps outside of the classroom as well. Sometimes that means taking an interest in broader parts of your subject that aren't necessarily on the curriculum. So not only the books that you're given to read, but being interested in other things that have been written on the subject. Or sometimes it can be something completely different. So I worked for a university newspaper whilst I was a student, and that was a great lesson for me in terms of how I write, understanding journalism, what the work that journalists do. I've always learned a lot from doing sports, participating in team sports or individually, and I think those kind of experiences can all help. I think there's also something about being open to opportunities. Sometimes they take a form that you don't expect. So one day I went into my religious studies faculty and I saw a notice on the board about Erasmus. Didn't know anything about Erasmus before that, had a look at it, and it was offering the opportunity to go and study either in Greece or in Denmark or in Sweden. I had not considered that. It was not a secret plan that I'd had all along, but I was open to the opportunity, had a look into it, thought it would be interesting, and I was one of very few people that showed an interest, and so I ended up going to Sweden and studying there for a while as part of Erasmus, and that was a brilliant experience as well.
In what way did it impact you, like Erasmus and also Japan? How did it change you as a person?
Yeah, so I think those are good questions. When you're growing up, I grew up in smallish university city, Oxford. I had great friends, great experience at school, but it was quite a narrow experience. And I think being open to moving to Sweden or to going to Japan after I graduated, what that did was it really opened my eyes to other experiences. And I think it's quite hard to appreciate the impact of that exposure to other cultures, other people, until you've had it, because you don't necessarily think of yourself as being narrow-minded or having a narrow experience until you see it from someone else's point of view. And I think that kind of experience of seeing how other people live, understanding that there are different ways of viewing the world, different experiences, that is part of the richness of those kind of opportunities. For me as well, part of that has always been linked to languages and learning languages. I did not speak very good Swedish even by the end of my time there. My Japanese was okay. I spent a lot of time on it. It's not easy. I did manage to get by in Japanese, but I think each of those experiences, as well as enjoying learning the language, it gives you an opportunity to understand other people better.
I'm also really interested in Japan, and I really think that experience probably was also amazing and completely life-changing because it's completely different culture. And would you recommend those kind of experiences, like moving to a really different area, a really different culture? And is it different like Sweden? Was it different in that sense?
I think any opportunity to experience living in a different country and a different culture to the one that you've grown up in, that's always a good thing. It's absolutely a good thing. So I look back on different stages of my life where I've lived in other countries. I've lived in South America, in Brazil. I've lived in Kenya, in Africa. I have lived in Japan, in Asia, and Sweden in Europe, as well as working in Croatia and now living here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I think all of those have been amazingly different experiences, but I've learned a lot through each of them. So I think it's great to have a particular interest in one place, but it's even better to have an interest in learning more generally.
At what point during your studies and all those experiences did you think, or did you start seeing yourself as a diplomat?
So I think I'm probably a good example of someone who did not have a plan. I did not have a plan. Some people know when they're 12 years old exactly what they're going to be for the rest of their life. I really didn't. I followed the things that I thought were interesting. That's how I ended up choosing the subjects I did at university. It's how I ended up going to Japan. It's how I ended up doing master's studies. I also ended up working after Japan at the international charity Oxfam, which is based in Oxford. So whilst I was doing my studies, I was volunteering part-time with Oxfam. actually helping them run their website, do some of their media work. That experience was probably just as important as my master's itself. So the couple of afternoons a week that I spent volunteering with this very large charity, doing great work around the world, that was a really important experience for me, because it gave me a different perspective on what I could contribute, what kind of things people were doing around the world. And actually it was during that time that I, for the very first time really, started to think about international careers, and an international career that involves living in different countries, not just traveling, but living in different countries. There aren't that many sort of easy careers to think of at that point. And that's when diplomacy, joining the Foreign Service, first crossed my mind. I didn't know anything really about it. To be honest, I didn't understand what a diplomat did. My family had no history of involvement, either working in those kinds of jobs or in government or anything. I was the first person in my family to stay at school past 16. So this was new territory for me, but it was, the more I looked into it, the more I thought, actually, yeah, that is something that I could really enjoy doing. And that's when I started to work towards it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the difficulties that you had with your first jobs and during that path? I mean, as you said, it's kind of a difficult choice to make, to follow that passion, and probably had a lot of difficulties that maybe you had to overcome and grow through that.
Yeah, so the first thing is I feel very lucky to have had the support that I had from my family. So my parents were incredibly supportive. Frankly, it must have crossed their mind when I said I wanted to do religious studies. They must have thought, well, what on earth are you going to do with that? What kind of jobs are you going to get at the end of that? But they were very supportive, and they helped and encouraged me to follow the things that I was interested in. I think that is one of the challenges, and some people, I totally understand, have very practical considerations that they have to make about what kind of job opportunity they will get at the end of their studies. I think when I look ahead at the sort of conversations maybe that I'm going to have with my kids when they're older about the kind of choices that they will make, I would just encourage them to think both of what the career opportunities are and what they're passionate about. Because a career in something that you do not enjoy is not something I would recommend to anyone. And I think trying to understand what your skills are, what you're good at, but also how you can make a career out of the things that you're interested in, I think that's a big challenge. I mean, I would just generally, I think the kind of considerations that people have now, maybe there's a bit more information available about the potential options. I would make a strong push for any young person today to think internationally, if not globally, about the opportunities that they have. That doesn't necessarily mean leaving the country that you're growing up in. It just means being open to opportunities in other places and potentially jobs that are global, but you are doing from your home country. And I think there's lots of examples of that here in Bosnia and Herzegovina, of people who are actually doing international or global jobs whilst getting all those benefits of living here.
When you look back now from your position, what do you think, besides the knowledge the students get at universities, what do you consider the most important thing for being successful in the professional aspect?
So I think there's a couple of things. One is, and I think you've had people talk to you about it before, is lifelong learning. You do not stop learning when you step out of the university or step out of your school. People who I see succeed in their professional lives and continue to succeed, which is the important part, are those who are open to continuing to learn. And learning might be studies, or it might just be opening and listening actively to the people around you, challenging yourself, being open to changing your mind about things, learning new skills, being open to new experiences. That is lifelong learning. And I think people I've seen succeed have done well in that. Second thing, and this is something I'm sort of become more and more interested in as I've gone on through my career, I think emotional intelligence is actually a really important part of what marks apart people who succeed versus people who are very smart but somehow struggle once they move to the workplace. So what do I mean by emotional intelligence? I mean, emotional intelligence for me is understanding yourself, what you're good at, what's happening with you emotionally, as well as where your skills and strengths are, and then understanding others. So you see people not only as their jobs, but actually as individuals, and you're interested in understanding them properly. And then thirdly, it's using those relationships to be successful in whatever it is that you're doing. So I think there is not a single career or project even, whether that's in the harder sciences, whether that's in an IT startup, whether that's in a cultural project, there is not a single one of those that does not require you to work with other people. And that requires emotional intelligence.
So, and that's something that we don't usually see being taught at universities or at faculties. And I know in my example and my friends that we don't really have opportunities to learn it during the formal education. So either we need to volunteer or somehow use those experiences. But the problem is basically that people don't think that they are up to the challenge. As I know it, a lot of my friends, they think they are not good enough for something, not good enough to apply for Erasmus or something like that. So maybe how would you tackle that challenge?
I think that's a really good point. I think you can learn emotional intelligence, that's the one thing. Whereas our IQ might be relatively fixed over the course of our lives, I think your EQ, your emotional intelligence, actually can develop and grow a great deal. So it's something that you can improve and get better at. And I've done that through working with really good mentors or just being open to the lessons that people around me are sharing. I think you can absolutely get better at it. There are some great books on emotional intelligence and some great articles, and I think any of them is a good starting point to start to think about yourself in that way. I think there's another point about mindset, which is really relevant here. And the importance of what's usually called a growth mindset. Okay, and this is, again, something that I've only come to understand later on in my life and in my career. But there is a really big difference between people who believe they can improve and grow and those who don't. And sometimes that can be, the smartest person in the room might think that if they fail at something, that will undermine their entire sense of self, their reputation, the way they see themselves, and therefore they don't do things that are difficult, or they're afraid to fail. And if you're afraid to fail, it's very hard to learn and to grow. And so I think looking for opportunities to challenge yourself, make yourself uncomfortable sometimes, try something that's a bit difficult. I think that is a really healthy thing to do. And I think people who have a growth mindset, who believe they can learn new things, who aren't afraid to say, actually, I don't understand that. Nope, didn't get it the first time. That doesn't quite make sense to me, and try to understand something better. That's a really healthy thing to do. All of the great successes that I see in terms of people who are leaders in their field, all of them have failed in some way. And if you're afraid to fail, then you won't make those kind of successes.
Maybe there are people who try and then fail. And during that process, they maybe try again, but at some point they get demotivated. And what advice would you give them how to keep going, how to keep advancing and keep improving, and how to not lose motivation?
I think it's good. Another good question. There's a really nice phrase, I can't remember, I think it's from Samuel Beckett, fail better. So each time you fail, you are taking a step forwards. And I think that's very true. Whoever your role model is, if it's Edison, if it's Ada Lovelace, whoever your sort of spiritual guru is, Elon Musk, whoever it is, all of them will have failed. And I think it's the people who continue to try and are not scared of failure, and who can say, very honestly to themselves, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? What do we learn from it? Move on. There's nothing to be afraid of in that. I mean, it doesn't mean that people should continue to do necessarily the same thing over and over again. It means learning from what went wrong and then doing it different and failing better next time.
So learning from your experiences, basically. And
absolutely. And those around you. And this is the point about emotional intelligence, I think, as well, is sometimes you just have to look for someone else to help you. I mean, look for someone who understands the issue a bit better, or someone who can complement your skills with their own skills, and also being ready to share your skills and understanding with others. The term networking can sometimes sound quite mercenary. That is, a transaction. It is someone who is constantly looking to get something from other people. But I think in the real sense, it means being connected to other people, being willing to share, and because you're willing to share, also willing to accept help from others.
Yeah. And since you have become the ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have seen that you have been sharing your experiences and you have been addressing young people. And can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement with young people in Bosnia and Herzegovina? And can you explain their role in shaping the society? You just recently promoted the Youth Advisory Group. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the great pleasures that I've had during my time here in Bosnia and Herzegovina is meeting young, motivated, creative, inspiring people in lots and lots of different fields. And I think that's one thing to say, is that I see lots of great human capital in lots of places around this country. They might be working in an IT startup, they might be involved in a running club, they might be getting into politics, they might be doing something completely different in their community. But there are lots of good examples, I think, of that kind of potential and people who want to do more. At the same time, I'm also very conscious that a number of people are choosing to leave this country in numbers that are far bigger than we've seen in the past. And they're leaving, when we sort of do some research and talk to them about those choices to leave, most of them are leaving because of frustration, because they want the opportunity to succeed somewhere else. So I think what we as the UK are trying to do here is to give them opportunities to succeed in this country. So if it's improving the education system, healthcare, if it's better job opportunities, less political influence in daily life, less corruption, those are the kinds of things that the UK is trying to do to help here. But I'm always aware that, frankly, I am not a young person from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm certainly not a young person. So thinking that I understand the issues they're facing is an assumption on my part and something that I wanted to check and unpick. So the idea of getting together a small group of young people to work with me to help me understand better what the issues are facing people in this country, that's where this sort of youth advisory group came from. Some of my predecessors have done similar things, trying to reach out to young people. Some British ambassadors in other parts of the world have done similar things. It's not that this is a completely new idea. What I'm trying to do, though, is by having 10 or so people from all over the country to check my understanding with, to hear from them, and also in return to share some of my lessons, to mentor, to coach, to give something to them as well. That's the idea of it. And I'm really excited that there's been so much interest. I mean, we've had, I think, 270 applications for those 10 places. So maybe we should be thinking, I'm wondering now about what other opportunities we've got to use that big network of motivated people. Just quickly on the Chevening side, so Chevening is one of the best bits of my job. It is a fully funded master's program in the UK for young people, and it can be in any subject, and it can be at any university in the UK. The thing that we're looking for is leadership. So people who are interested in making a difference, who are leaders in their field. You can be a leader as a musician, you can be a leader as a heart surgeon, as a lawyer, as working in computer sciences, all sorts of areas. We're looking for leadership, and that's what we invest in. And it's a brilliant program, and it's open now until the start of November. So I do hope people will have a look. Chevening, and then if you look for Chevening, you'll find lots more information about it.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that program? How can people apply? And besides leadership, do they need to have finished bachelor, or what kind of students are we addressing now?
So the first thing is, you can have graduated in any subject. So there's no specific list of subjects. We are looking for people to have some working experience, so probably not fresh out of their undergraduate degree, but probably they've had some experience. But we define that quite broadly. So you could have been working part-time alongside a degree, or you could have been volunteering somewhere, as long as you can show us that you've got some experience in the real world. Then we're looking for people who have an idea of what they will bring back to Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Chevening is a program, master's study in the UK, but you need to bring those skills back. So we're investing in people who have an idea of what they want to do when they come back. And again, we interpret that very broadly. It can be in your subject, in your company, in your community. We're looking for people who want to make a difference. And then just the last sort of personal tip from me. The people I've seen, I've done many, many interviews for Chevening. The people I've seen do best are the people who have thought about how they want to change themselves and how they want to change the world, essentially. And if you can answer those two questions, then you've got a very good case for Chevening.
Thank you very much for sharing those tips and all your experiences that you told us about. So for the end, I would like to ask you, do you have any advice for all young people listening to us now before they start their careers? And if they are at the end of their faculty, what advice would you give them?
Sure, I've got a couple of things. Number one, and this might seem slightly strange career advice, vote. We have local elections coming soon, and we've seen over the last few years the number of people, especially young people, voting has been dropping. I just want to say very clearly, please vote. If you are happy with the way things are today, you should vote. If you are not happy with the way things are today, you should vote. It's a really important opportunity, and local elections have probably the most immediate impact on people. The only people who want you not to vote are those who are in power already. So do not believe the argument that it's pointless to vote. It's a very deliberate message from those who do not want to hear from you. So I think young people voting is the most important thing you can do, certainly over the next couple of months. In terms of advice, again, people I've seen succeed, the lessons I draw from my own career, it's that point before about having a learning mindset. So be open to learning. The kind of people that you have listening to this who are involved in the job fair, who are already studying very specific subjects, will have an amazing amount to contribute at the end of their degrees. When they graduate, they will have a huge maybe range of opportunities here and elsewhere. I still am optimistic about the future of this country because of the quality of those young people that I see coming through and out of those universities and the creativity that they have. So if you are open to learning and you are open to making that difference to others around you, I think there's fantastic opportunities here. For our part, the UK is going to try to help make that easier, to make it easier to set up a business, to close a business, we are already teaching more creativity, more problem solving in schools, more IT skills. And we're trying to ease away some of those barriers that I know are the reality of living in this country. But if you can do that, and I've lived in a lot of different places, but I think if you can do that, then this country has everything that people need in order to succeed. And that's what makes me optimistic about it.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And thank you for your time and participation in the JobFAIR 20 educational program. It was a pleasure talking to you, and we wish you a lot of success in the continuation of your career.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
And for all our listeners, don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and of course our official website. Stay healthy and talk to you soon on the next podcast.